Greetings, fellow makers. I'm Brittany Duran from Punished Props, and I am currently working on a Star Wars costume. And no Star Wars costume is complete without a cool blaster. Instead of just painting a toy, I'll show you how I turned this thrift store purchase into this guy. It was a super fun modification, so stick around to see how I added all the extra pieces and painted it. For this entire build, I wore either a dust mask or respirator. You don't want to breathe in mystery plastic dust or the fumes from the spray paint. A pole saw easily cuts through the plastic parts I want to remove from my design. Flush cut nippers help to remove smaller plastic pieces. For the pistol modification, the whole barrel gets shortened and cleaned up with sandpaper. CA glue works great to bond plastic pieces back together. It's always a good idea to rough up smooth surfaces before applying the super glue. Different size files help remove the remaining plastic bits. I left the audio electronics inside as I glued the shorter barrel into place. We have a box of random toy parts in which I found an old airsoft gun scope. I want to keep this build lightweight, so I just harvested the plastic parts of the scope. Also, I wanted the scope to be shorter, but I did keep the center glass part, so it will still sort of be functional. I dug through our bin of PVC pipe scraps and cut off pieces to fit the scope design, sanding and gluing the parts together as I went along. This toy telescope is left over from our lightsaber build, and the center section looks like a nice, interesting addition to the scope. A rotary tool with a sanding drum helped form the resting spot for the scope. The whole surface of the gun was sanded, and I used a rougher grit of sandpaper to remove the raised up text. The handle design needs to be spruced up, so I harvested a Nerf end strike handle. I cut away the meat of the handle's interior and cleaned out the rest with a rotary tool. This way I can slide the new handle shell over the old handle and it'll be structurally sound. At this point, I also decided to not care about the electronics and just seal up the battery slot. The audio blaster noise was pretty crummy anyway. To smooth out and fill in the details, I used a 2-part epoxy sculpt. You mix the 2 parts together and the clay-like material will cure rock hard in a few hours. If the epoxy dough is tacky, you can use water to smooth everything out. The unwanted screw holes are also filled in with the epoxy. After curing, the freeform sculpt doesn't flex at all, so it works well with the hard plastic surface. It also sands pretty well. The whole surface is sanded before the scope gets permanently attached. Some threaded rods will help hold the structure in place. 5-minute epoxy is a great adhesive for when you need some working time to get the pieces all fit together. I hit up our random parts bin to assemble an interesting looking cover for the front of the gun. Also, another toy gun switch was harvested to add some more detail. This got secured in place with a screw piece and more CA glue. I could have spent more time cleaning up the seams and adding even more detail, but I decided it was good enough and moved on to painting. The Krylon Fusion Camouflage series of paints bonds incredibly well to plastic. I applied 2 coats and then let the paint dry overnight. Then I thinned down some Tamiya chrome silver paint with isopropyl alcohol so I could airbrush on a silver layer. Airbrushing allows for a much finer application of paint and I can get into all the detail areas. I sealed the silver layer with gloss spray paint. Now it's time to mask off areas that will look like chipped paint. I decided to try out mustard for the masking material. The mustard gets applied to areas where I think the gun would have the most wear and damage. Right after application, I sprayed more of the black Krylon camouflage over the whole surface. After the paint dried, I wiped down the surface with a paper towel and some water to clean away the mustard spots. Revealing the chipped paint effect is really satisfying. I roughed up the edges with some sandpaper to help remove some more of the black paint and reveal the silver underneath. Some steel wool helped scratch up the surface as well. Continuing with some more finishing experiments, I tried highlighting all the edges with some graphite. This is a super cool effect that I want to practice more on future projects. I didn't want to remove any more of the black paint, so I clear coated the whole gun. Unfortunately, the application was a little spotty, so the whole gun ended up with a bit of a texture. It still looks alright though. Model makers like to use weathering powders, so I thought I'd give those a try. I brushed on the powder in the low spots and wiped most of it away. The yellow really helps add some dimension to the darker crevices of the gun. I tried applying more graphite to the highlights, but it's not quite as noticeable now that the whole gun has some texture and a little bit of gloss to the surface. To keep the powders and graphite in place, a flat clear lacquer was lightly airbrushed over the whole surface. And I'm calling that done! It was a lot of fun taking a toy gun base, hacking it up, and gluing on other random parts to create a gun that looks like it could belong in the Star Wars universe. I got to practice some different finishing techniques, which was super cool, and I learned a lot in the process. I hope this build encourages you to not just repaint some toys, but to do some fun modifications to create something unique and truly your own. I'll see you in my next video where I finish the rest of my Star Wars costume and involves some more thrift store purchases and some sewing modifications. Have fun making, and I'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks for watching! If you're new to the channel, please subscribe so you don't miss any of our new weekly prop and costume tutorial videos. For more goodies, head over to our website where you'll find blueprints, tutorial books, articles, and more. We also have a second channel for our Q&A show and extra behind the scenes videos. Thanks again, and happy crafting!